Hey, I'm Emma. Welcome to Emma's Betrayal Stories now. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories aren't rushed. They're the kind you sit with. Today's story comes with an update and my own personal opinions throughout the story. Let me know in the comments if you agree or see it differently. Let's begin. I caught my stepmother lying about my inheritance. I took command and changed my future. The probate office carpet had that stale, vacuumed too many times smell, and my stepmother's voice was floating across the little conference room like she owned the air. "There isn't really an inheritance," she said, smiling at the clerk, her hand resting on the thick folder like it was a menu she'd already chosen from. "After the medical bills and the debts, there's just nothing to distribute. It's sad, but that's life." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the woman behind the desk, like I was a piece of furniture that didn't need addressing. I heard my own breath get loud in my ears. My fingers were numb from gripping my purse strap, and my knee kept bouncing under the table hard enough that the cheap plastic chair squeaked. I leaned forward anyway, feeling my face flush and my throat tighten, and I put my palm down on the folder before she could slide it away. "Open it," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. My stepmother's eyes snapped to mine, wide for half a second, then narrowed into that familiar sweet disappointed expression she always used on me. "Honey," she murmured, like I was being unreasonable in public. I didn't move my hand. I could feel the paper edges through the cover, the weight of the thing, the stubborn reality of it. "Open it," I repeated, and this time the clerk stopped typing. It started the week after my dad's funeral. When the casseroles were gone, the sympathy text slowed down, and the house stopped feeling like a place people came to check on us and started feeling like a place my stepmother was rearranging while I was still trying to figure out how to breathe. My dad, Mark, was the steady one in my life. Not perfect, but steady. He was the parent who didn't turn every conversation into a scoreboard. He was the one who would quietly slide me gas money in college and pretend it was for snacks, because admitting I needed help made me uncomfortable, and he knew it. He owned a small contracting business, and he wasn't flashy, but he'd built something. A modest house paid off early. Retirement accounts he contributed to like clockwork. A life that wasn't extravagant, but secure. He married my stepmother, Claire, when I was 16, after my mom left and life felt like a half-packed suitcase for a while. Claire had a son from a previous relationship, Tyler, who was 2 years younger than me, and she had a talent for making everything sound reasonable while still getting exactly what she wanted. When Dad got sick, it was fast in the cruelest way. A few months of "let's run one more test," then suddenly we were talking about hospice. I moved back home because it felt unthinkable not to. I took leave from my job, slept on the couch some nights because my old bedroom had become a storage room for medical supplies. Claire cried a lot in front of other people. In private, she became efficient in a way that made my skin crawl: appointments, insurance calls, controlling who visited, what Dad ate, when he slept. I told myself she was coping. I told myself everyone grieves differently. The thing about my dad is he hated conflict. He would smooth over the rough parts of people because he thought love meant patience. So when Claire corrected him mid-sentence or spoke for him, he'd laugh it off. When she called his business our future, he'd smile. When she joked about me being too sensitive, he'd change the subject and squeeze my shoulder. He never said, "Stop." He never drew lines. And I didn't realize how expensive that would become until he was gone. After the funeral, Claire did this strange performance of togetherness. She'd hug me in front of relatives and say things like, "We'll get through this as a family." And then later she'd forget to tell me about meetings with lawyers. She'd tell me she was handling paperwork in a tone that implied it was a burden she was nobly carrying. I offered to help. She'd wave me off. "You focus on healing," she'd say, as if she'd appointed herself the manager of my grief. 2 weeks later, I asked about the will. I wasn't even thinking like a greedy person. I was thinking like a daughter who watched her dad work himself sore for decades and wanted to know his wishes would be respected. Claire was making coffee in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Dad used to hum while he grilled sandwiches, and she didn't turn around when I asked. "Your father and I talked about it," she said, "stirring the sugar too long, spoon clinking against the mug. Everything goes to the spouse when someone dies, honey. That's normal. Did he have a will? I asked. She took a sip like she needed time. We had documents, she said. But it's complicated. Complicated how? She set the mug down and finally looked at me, brows lifted like she was dealing with a stubborn child. Mark had debts, she said. Medical bills. The business is in a tricky position. There's not some big pot of gold. I know you're stressed, but please don't fixate on money. Fixate. The word stuck to me like oil. I wasn't fixating. I was asking a reasonable question. But she said it with this soft reprimand that made me feel ashamed for even bringing it up, and my old reflex, keep the peace, don't rock the boat, kicked in. I nodded, swallowed, went back to my couch, and stared at the wall for an hour. Then I got an email. It was from my dad's accountant, a man named Jeff who'd known our family since I was a kid. The subject line was, condolences plus important. It was short and careful, like he'd rewritten it 5 times. He said he'd tried to reach Claire regarding distribution documents, and he asked if I was still the best contact for Mark's business affairs as listed in the file. As listed in the file. I reread that phrase until my eyes started to burn. Because the last time Dad updated his business paperwork, he'd told me, I'm putting you as my backup, just in case. You're level-headed. I remembered him saying it because I'd rolled my eyes and said, I'm not that level-headed, and he'd laughed. I wrote back and asked Jeff what he meant by distribution documents. He replied with an attachment, a scanned copy of a beneficiary designation form for my dad's small retirement account through the business. It listed me as the primary beneficiary. Not Claire. Me. My stomach flipped so hard I thought I might throw up. I wasn't excited. I wasn't relieved. I was horrified, because if Claire was telling the truth and there was nothing left, then why was there a document like that? And if she was lying, what else was she lying about? I didn't tell her right away. I sat in my car outside a grocery store and stared at the PDF on my phone until the screen dimmed. I could feel sweat under my arms. I could hear my dad's voice in my head, calm, practical, telling me to be smart. I didn't know what being smart looked like when the person you lived with was quietly rewriting your father's death. So I started collecting facts the way I always do when my emotions feel too big. Lists, screenshots, timestamps. I called Jeff, and my voice shook so badly I had to clear my throat twice before I could speak. He was hesitant at first, but when I said, Claire is saying there's nothing, he went quiet in a way that told me everything. Then he said, carefully, I can't speak to estate matters. But your father did plan, and he was very clear about certain things. Like what? I whispered. Like you being protected, he said. That sentence did something to me. It didn't make me feel rich or lucky. It made me feel seen by my dad, even from the grave. And it made me furious, because it meant Claire wasn't just misunderstanding. She was overriding. I started digging. I requested Dad's death certificate copies. I called the bank and asked what documentation they needed for information as next of kin. They gave me the runaround, but they also told me the name of the estate attorney Claire had contacted. I searched my dad's desk at night when Claire was asleep, feeling guilty, even though I was looking for something that belonged to my dad, not her. I found a file folder labeled Estate, tucked under old invoices. Inside were notes in my dad's handwriting, a list of accounts, and a sticky note that said, House to Claire, if she keeps promise. Maya gets remainder. Make sure. Keep promise. I sat on the floor of his office, the carpet rough against my legs, and I felt my throat close like I was swallowing sand. What promise? To not cut me out? To not sell the house out from under me? To be fair? I didn't know. But I knew he'd worried enough to write it down. When I finally confronted Claire, it wasn't dramatic. It was in the kitchen, again, because so much of our family tension lived in that room. She was chopping vegetables with quick, angry strokes, like the cutting board had offended her. I talked to Jeff, I said. Her knife paused for half a second. Why? She asked, voice flat. Because he emailed me, I said. And he sent me a beneficiary form with my name on it. She didn't look surprised. She looked irritated, like I'd found a hidden mess under the couch. That's old, she said. Mark probably forgot to update it. It's dated last year, I said, and my hands are shaking, so I shoved them into my sweatshirt pocket. Why did you tell me there was nothing? Claire set the knife down slowly, wiped her hands on a towel, and smiled, small and tight. Because you are grieving, she said, and you are looking for something to control.
Ist zerrte her.
I'm looking for the truth, I said. She sighed, like I was exhausting. The truth is, your father wanted me to be okay, she said. And Tyler, we're the ones living here. You're an adult. You have a job. You'll be fine. The casual way she lumped my dad's entire life into "you'll be fine" made my vision go sharp. He wanted me protected, I said. He wrote it down. Her eyes flicked, just once, to the office door, like she could see through walls into the folder I'd found. Then she said, "You're accusing me of something awful." "I'm accusing you of lying," I said. That night she cried loudly enough that my aunt called me and told me I was stressing Claire out. Tyler texted me, "Why are you doing this to Mom?" My father's sister, Aunt Renee, told me to be careful because Claire was handling things. Everyone spoke like Claire was the main character of my dad's death, and I was a side plot causing trouble. That's when I decided. I was done being careful for people who weren't careful with me. I made an appointment at the probate office myself. Claire didn't know until she saw me in the conference room. She walked in with her neat blouse and her binder, smile ready, and then it froze when she saw me already sitting there. The clerk, young, tired eyes, polite, asked for documents. Claire launched into her nothing left story like she'd practiced it in the mirror. And that's when she said it. The line that made my stomach drop and my hand slam onto the folder. There isn't really an inheritance. I forced the clerk to open the folder. Claire's face turned a shade paler with every page. The clerk's expression stayed neutral, but her eyes moved faster, scanning. My name appeared. Account numbers. A property note. A small life insurance payout. It wasn't millions. It wasn't rich. But it was real, and it was what my dad had left behind, and Claire had been trying to make it disappear. The clerk cleared her throat. "Mrs. Hart," she said to Claire, "this indicates there are assets requiring distribution." Claire laughed, an airy, offended sound. "Those are joint assets," she said quickly. "And the retirement account, Mark must have. Beneficiary designations aren't must have," the clerk said, still calm. "They're filed." Claire turned to me, smile gone completely now. "You planned this," she hissed under her breath. I looked at her and felt something surprising. Not triumph, not joy, just a cold steadiness. "No," I said quietly. "You did." I hired a probate attorney that afternoon. Her name was Dana, and she wore bright red lipstick like she'd made a decision a long time ago to take up space. She didn't gasp or pity me. She asked questions. She requested records. She explained in plain language what my rights were and what steps existed if an executor was misrepresenting assets. She didn't promise revenge. She promised process. "Do you want conflict?" Dana asked me, pen poised. I swallowed. "I want my father's wishes followed," I said. "And I want to stop being treated like I'm crazy for noticing things." Dana nodded once. "Good," she said, "because those are the same goal." Claire got served notice within a week. Suddenly, she was very interested in talking things out. She called me late at night and left voicemails that switched between tearful and angry. She showed up at my apartment once, standing in the hallway with a sad face like she was about to apologize, and then when I didn't immediately soften, she snapped, "You're doing this to punish me." "No," I said, and my hands were sweating on my door handle. "I'm doing this because you tried to steal from me." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's a disgusting thing to say," she whispered. "What's disgusting is lying about my dad," I said. Tyler started posting vague social media statuses about ungrateful people and women who ruin families over money. He never named me, but people commented heart emojis and stay strong like he was recovering from trauma instead of watching his mom get caught. My aunt called again and asked if we could keep this private. Private. Like my dad's wishes were a dirty secret. The more they tried to shame me, the more solid I became. I stopped answering calls. I communicated through Dana. I changed passwords. I pulled my dad's old documents into secure storage. I started sleeping again for the first time since the funeral. Then Claire made her biggest mistake. She filed paperwork claiming she was the sole executor and that I had no involvement. Dana called me into her office, laid the document down, and pointed at the signature line. "Did your father name her executor?" she asked. I stared at the paper, heart thudding. "I don't know," I admitted. Dana slid a copy of the will sheet obtained through the court request across the desk. "Read it," she said. My hands shook as I turned pages. My dad's signature was there, steady and familiar. The executor line made my throat tighten. He'd named me as co-executor. Not Claire alone.
Me, too.
I sat back like someone had punched the air out of me. Dana watched my face. "That changes a lot," she said calmly. "It changed everything." And it's where I'm going to pause, because this is the exact point where Claire realized she couldn't bully her way through anymore, and she started playing dirtier. I'm going to be blunt. Claire is the kind of person who thinks tears are a business strategy. She's not stupid, and that's what makes her scary. She's smart enough to keep everything just plausible enough that if you confront her, she can widen her eyes and act wounded, like you're the unreasonable one for noticing math isn't mathing. She'll talk about family, like it's a blanket everyone should wrap around her, but the second you ask her to share warmth, she tightens it around herself. Tyler is a cowardly accessory. He's not masterminding anything, he's benefiting from it. He's the guy who posts vague quotes about loyalty while quietly cashing checks someone else lied for. And the way he leans into the poor me narrative is gross, because he's not a kid. He's old enough to ask, "Is this right?" And he chooses not to because the lie is comfortable. The rest of the family annoys me in a different way. The keep it private people are basically saying, "Let her do it, just don't make us uncomfortable." They don't care about my dad's wishes. They care about the illusion of peace at holiday dinners. They want me to swallow injustice so they can keep eating cake without tension. And me? I'm learning that grief doesn't make you weaker. Sometimes it burns away your patience for nonsense. I didn't go looking for a fight, but once I saw the lie in black and white, I couldn't unsee it. And I couldn't go back to being the polite girl who gets quietly erased. Update. Okay, so after I found out I was co-executor, things escalated in a way I genuinely wasn't prepared for. Like, I expected tension. I expected cold shoulders. I did not expect Claire to treat this like a war. First, she tried to isolate me. The day after Dana told Claire we had the will naming me co-executor, Claire texted me a photo of my dad's old wedding ring box with the lid open. Inside was the ring and a note in my dad's handwriting that I'd never seen. From Maya. That was it. 2 words. My chest actually tightened like someone was squeezing it. Claire's message said, "Come to the house alone, and we can discuss this like adults. I want to give you something your father left for you." I stared at the photo for a long time. My dad's handwriting always got me. It made him feel close and unreachable at the same time. For a minute, I almost went. I almost let grief make me soft. Then Dana's voice in my head, "Process." I replied, "My attorney will coordinate pickup." Claire immediately called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that started calm and turned nasty halfway through. "You're turning this into something ugly," she said, voice trembling with anger. "Mark would be ashamed of you. He wouldn't want this." That line, using my dad's memory as a weapon, made my hands go cold. I forwarded the voicemail to Dana. Second, she tried to move money. Dana requested statements for accounts tied to the estate, and one of the banks flagged that a withdrawal attempt had been made from a joint account that was supposed to be frozen pending probate. The bank stopped it because the death had already been reported. Dana called me and said, "She's trying to drain anything she can before the court can stop her." Hearing that made me feel nauseous, but it also snapped something into focus. This wasn't just misunderstanding paperwork. This was intentional. Dana filed an emergency motion asking the court to restrict Claire's access to estate assets and require an accounting. Translation: Claire had to provide documentation of what existed, what she'd touched, where it went. She fought it, of course. She claimed she needed access for house expenses and that I was harassing a widow. Then she took it public. She hosted a family dinner at the house, my dad's house, the one he paid off, and invited people I hadn't seen since the funeral. My aunt texted me, "Claire is devastated. She just wants peace." Peace, again, like peace is something I'm obligated to donate. I didn't go, but I got screenshots. People posted photos in the living room with captions like, "Family first" and "Supporting Claire." In one photo, Tyler was holding a beer and smiling in front of my dad's framed photo, like it was a party decoration. Someone commented, "Where's Maya?" And my aunt replied, "She's busy." Busy like I'd missed dinner because of work, not because they were staging a narrative. Then Claire did the third thing, the dirtiest thing. She filed for a protective order.
Yes. You read that right.
I got served papers saying Claire was requesting a protection order because I was harassing her and making her feel unsafe. The examples listed were me showing up unannounced. I went to the probate office, where I had every right to be, threatening legal action. I hired an attorney. And disturbing her peace, I asked for documents. Dana was furious in a calm, controlled way that honestly made me feel protected for the first time in weeks. "This is intimidation," she said. "She's trying to make you look unstable so the court questions your credibility." I cried in Dana's office, which I hate doing, but it wasn't even sad crying. It was the kind of crying that happens when you realize someone is willing to lie about you to win. Dana handed me tissues and said, "Let her file. We respond with facts." So we did. We brought emails. We brought bank flags. We brought the beneficiary form. We brought the will naming me co-executor. We brought the probate clerk's notes indicating Claire claimed there were no assets. Dana requested the judge order Claire to stop contacting me directly and communicate only through counsel. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. The hearing was humiliating in that sterile courthouse way where you're sitting on a hard bench under fluorescent lights, listening to someone talk about your life like it's a case file, not a heart. Claire showed up dressed in soft colors, hair neatly done, eyes red like she'd practiced crying in the mirror. Tyler sat behind her, jaw set, acting like my existence was an attack. When the judge asked Claire why she'd claimed there were no assets, Claire said, "I was confused. I was grieving." She dabbed her eyes and looked at the judge like she was begging to be understood. Then she looked at me for half a second, and in that glance I saw it, cold annoyance that I hadn't folded. Dana stood and, without raising her voice, laid out the timeline. The misrepresentation. The emails from Sam. "Sorry, Tyler, no. In this story, Tyler's Claire's son. He hadn't impersonated me in emails, but he had been asking suppliers for quotes for future plans." The attempted withdrawal. The protective order request. Dana ended with, "Your Honor, my client is not harassing anyone. She is performing her legal duty as co-executor. The estate requires an accounting." The judge's face stayed neutral, but his tone changed when he spoke to Claire. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "you will provide a full accounting within 14 days. You will not transfer, sell, or dispose of estate assets without court approval. Communication will go through attorneys." The protection order request is denied. Claire's mouth tightened. She didn't cry then. She just stared forward like she was swallowing rage. Outside the courtroom, Tyler tried to corner me. He stepped close, voice low. "You're disgusting," he said. "My mom is suffering." I looked at him and felt nothing warm. "Your mom is lying," I said.
He scoffed.
"You just want money." I held up my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of my dad's note from the estate folder. The one that said, "Make sure." I didn't even speak for a second. Tyler's face flickered. Then he said he didn't mean. He meant exactly what he wrote. I said, and I walked away. So that's where we are. The court is involved, the accounts are being audited, and Claire can't pretend anymore. I wish that made me feel better. Mostly it makes me feel tired and weirdly lonely because the people who should have stood with me, family, are standing with the woman who tried to erase me. But here's the good part. I'm not alone. I have Dana. I have my best friend Kira, who started coming over with groceries and sitting on my floor while I ranted. I have Jeff, who quietly backed up my dad's planning without making it about drama. And I have this growing feeling that I'm allowed to take up space in my own life, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Now, back to the story, because the accounting is where everything finally cracked open. Claire's accounting arrived exactly on the 14th day, delivered through her attorney in a thick envelope that smelled faintly like copier toner. I opened it at Dana's office with my hands steady for once, like my body had decided panic was no longer useful. The first few pages were what you'd expect, lists of accounts, balances, expenses. Then Dana flipped to a section labeled Household Improvements and raised her eyebrows. Claire had claimed thousands of dollars in home repairs after my dad's death. New appliances. Landscaping.
Arruf consultation.
Except the dates were wrong. The invoices were inconsistent. One of the contractor names was familiar in the worst way. It was Tyler's friend's small business. Dana didn't react emotionally. She just circled things with a pen and said, "We verify." We verified. The roof consultation didn't exist. The appliance purchase was a receipt for a high-end espresso machine, not a fridge. The landscaping company address matched Tyler's girlfriend's dad. It was a web of small eyes designed to bleed the estate quietly. Dana filed objections. The court requested clarification. Claire's attorney suddenly wanted to settle. The settlement meeting happened in a different bland conference room, this one with a bowl of stale mints and a view of a parking lot. Claire sat across from me, hands folded, face composed, as if she hadn't tried to paint me as a threat 2 weeks earlier. Tyler sat beside her, arms crossed, eyes hard. Dana slid papers across the table. "We're not here to punish anyone," she said. "We're here to follow the will." Claire exhaled sharply.
Fine, she said.
"What do you want?" There it was. Not what did Mark want. Not how do we honor him. What do you want? I looked at her and felt something settle in me like a door closing. "I want what my father wrote," I said. "I want transparency. And I want the ring he left for me without it being bait." Claire's jaw tightened. For a second, she looked older. "You could have had a relationship with us," she said softly, trying a new angle. "You chose this." "No," I said. "You chose this when you lied." Silence stretched. Tyler scoffed, but Claire lifted a hand to stop him, which was the first time I'd ever seen her stop him. The settlement wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork and signatures and forced politeness. Claire kept the house like Dad intended, but with conditions she couldn't wiggle out of. She had to pay out my portion from other accounts and the insurance policy that had my name on it. Tyler got a small amount from Claire directly, not from the part my dad earmarked for me, which made Claire's mouth pinch, like she'd swallowed something bitter. When the meeting ended, Claire stood and said, very quietly, "Are you happy now?" I paused, keys in my hand, feeling the metal bite my palm. "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm done." A week later, I got the ring. It arrived in a small padded envelope from Claire's attorney, no note, no apology. I opened it alone on my couch. My dad's handwriting for Maya was tucked inside like a tiny heartbeat. I put the ring on my finger even though it was too big, and I sat there breathing until my chest stopped hurting. The money didn't change my life overnight. It wasn't enough to turn me into a different person. What it did was remove the fear that had been humming under my life for years, the fear of never being secure, of always having to prove I deserved space. I paid off my student loan. I built an emergency fund. I took a weekend off for the first time in months and drove to the coast with Kira, where the air smelled like salt and sunscreen, and I remembered what it felt like to laugh without checking my phone. And then I did the thing that actually changed my future. I used part of it to go back to school, part-time nights, because I'd been quietly wanting to pivot careers for years, but couldn't risk the financial instability. I enrolled in a program Dad would have teased me about in the best way, the one he'd call fancy. The first night of class, sitting in a fluorescent-lit room with a notebook open, I felt a wave of grief so strong I had to grip the edge of the desk. Not because I missed money, because I missed him. Because he should have been there to roll his eyes at my stress and bring me a fast food coffee afterward. But he wasn't. And still I was doing it. Because he'd planned. Because he'd tried to protect me. Because I finally protected myself too. Claire and Tyler stopped contacting me after the settlement, except for one last attempt. A holiday text from Claire that said, "Mark would want us together." I stared at it, then deleted it. Dad would want me safe. He'd written it down. I don't know what happens to Claire and Tyler long-term. I'm sure they'll tell people their version forever. How I attacked a widow, how I tore apart a family. I can't control the story they tell in rooms I'm not in. But I can control my life. And for the first time since my dad got sick, that feels like air. Claire deserves the kind of consequence that isn't dramatic but is permanent. Being seen clearly. Because the worst thing for someone like her isn't a lawsuit or a public scene, it's losing the ability to spin. She built her whole personality around being the reasonable one, the suffering widow, the martyr carrying paperwork while everyone else is emotional. And the second facts show up, that performance cracks. Watching her file a protective order over basic probate questions tells you everything you need to know. She doesn't want fairness. She wants control. If she can't control outcomes, she'll try to control perception. That's not grief. That's strategy. Tyler is the kind of person who will swear he's a good guy while standing on someone else's neck. He wasn't the mastermind, but he's absolutely the beneficiary, and he chose comfort over integrity every step of the way. The vague posts, the "you just want money," the way he centered his mom's feelings while ignoring that she lied about a dead man's wishes, gross. He's not a child. He's old enough to understand right and wrong. He just prefers whatever gets him the nicer version of life, without the work. The extended family, keep it private, crowd annoys me almost as much as the liars, because they're the emotional equivalent of wet cardboard. Useless in a storm, but somehow always in the way. They'll preach family first, until family actually requires courage, then suddenly it's don't make it messy. They wanted you to swallow theft, so they didn't have to sit in discomfort. That's not peacemaking. That's enabling with better PR. Dana, on the other hand, is the hero you don't realize you need until you're drowning. Not because she wins, but because she refuses to let emotions replace facts. She's the person who takes your shaking hands and turns them into a timeline, a filing, a boundary the court can enforce. People like that change lives quietly. And the narrator, you didn't get greedy. You got awake. You stopped being the polite daughter who lets herself be erased to keep the room calm. You took command, not to punish anyone, but to stop being treated like you're optional in your own father's story. That's the real transformation here. The inheritance money is just a tool. The actual inheritance is the spine you built when you realized love without respect isn't love, it's a leash.